Hi, everyone, and welcome to another episode of Boston Balling. I'm your host, Gabby Hurlbut. It's Thursday, so almost the end of the week. So good job to everybody for getting through the week almost and just power through. So it's exciting everything going on in sports right now. It's a really exciting time. So definitely everybody's, I think, happy about that. So I'm pleased to introduce my guest for this week, Bruins announcer Billy Jaffe. How are you doing?
Well, how are you doing, Gabby?
Doing well, yeah. Definitely just optimistic for the end of this pandemic, and I'm happy to see fans in the crowd at games again now.
That's it's been wonderful. There's no question about that. It's been great. It's amazing how 2,000 to 3,000 people have never looked and sounded so good compared to in the past, where we would chide any crowd below 15,000 as not being adequate. But I think it's all, as we know, it's all relative. I hope that we're getting close to the end of this. I sure hope so. Some states are having a harder time, it seems like, managing it. But, be safe, be smart, get your shot. Let's get out of this. And hopefully by the end of the summer, I hope if we're not back to normalcy, whatever that means now, we're close to it.
I agree with that. Yeah. And I think there's definitely some optimism with more being open now and restrictions starting to be lifted and with people getting their shots. So I'm hoping by the end of the summer as well that normalcy, I guess we don't really know what normalcy is anymore,
Nope.
but as long as we can kind of start to live lives a little more normally again, I think that's kind of the goal for everybody at this point with just everything that we've been through over the past year or so.
Well, it's all about mitigating it. If we can make it to where we can manage it, people are going to get sick. I'm not even saying of COVID. I'm saying people get sick in general. But as long as we can manage it, not overwhelm our systems, and especially in certain areas, we can move on with it. But I think a lot of people want to have their proverbial cake and eat it too. And we just need to get to a certain point, and then I think we can do that again. But we're not here to talk COVID. We're here to talk sports. So
correct.
What's going on?
Correct. Yeah. It's awesome to have you on the show. I know it's been, an interesting season for the Bruins so far this year. I think going into the year, there was just some question marks about kind of how the season was going to go just based on some of the moves that they had made prior to this season starting. And overall, they've had some great performances. They've had their downs, obviously, and, they've had some really good performances too. But I think overall, in terms of this season, what do you see as kind of the biggest strengths so far as we approach kind of a key part of the season now?
Well, their strengths have been goaltending, even with the demise isn't the right word. The injury to Tuukka, right now as we record this, the COVIDness of Yarrow, but yet the youngsters very early in Vladar and Swayman's career, and I mean very early, have shown great strength and mental fortitude, I think. Now, whether that lasts, who knows? It's like a baseball pitcher going through the league the second time. There's video now, there's tendencies, everything. So we'll see. I sure hope. Both Vladar and Swayman seem to have at least the goods initially. So I think goaltending for the most part has been a strength. I know there's a lot of fans out there that don't ever want to see them give up more than 2 goals a game, and never a bad one. Last I checked, it's a game of stuff happening. So, it's going to happen here and there. I think that for a while, the team defense was a strength. I still think it is. Yet this is coming off a 25-shot performance in the second period against Philadelphia that was god-awful. So I almost sound like a bit of a contradictory analyst here. I mean, look, you're allowed to have some bad periods, I guess. But that's kept them in it because their weakness has been their offense. I think anybody who follows the team knows that, is that their offense has been anemic at times. And we're not used to always seeing that in Boston with this team.
Exactly. And that's, I think, at the beginning of the season, what I didn't expect to really be the weakness. I was a little more worried about the defense just because there were question marks there. But they, like you said, with the goaltending, that's been keeping them in these games just because there is a scoring issue. And that's
Yep.
been frustrating game to game, going and seeing them be so inconsistent when it comes to the scoring.
Yeah. It's been it's tough because, who doesn't love goals, right? And you feel it's funny, you feel better, at least people seem to feel better, when the team is outscoring some of their mistakes. People always then like to say, well, they can't keep outscoring their mistakes. You're right, but you at least feel better that they're scoring. When they're still making mistakes and not scoring, you're like, holy smokes, what are we going to do with this team? But this team has not gotten the performances they need from a couple of guys yet. They haven't gotten it from Jake DeBrusk. I know he's coming back into the lineup after his COVID stint, but even before that, he wasn't scoring. Yeah. They haven't gotten it from Charlie Coyle. They have not, which has surprised me. I don't expect him to be a 30 goal scorer, but I thought we'd get more out of him this year. I thought this year was made for him, given how strong he is, how physically fit he is, how possession type of a player he is. Haven't gotten that. Bjork has been very inconsistent as well. Craig Smith has started to come back a little. So it's a long way of getting to it's top heavy, which I think many of us understood that they were strong top line, but now they're completely top heavy. And that's concerning. It has to be.
Yeah, it definitely is concerning. And with, like you alluded to, with people underperforming and almost seeing like they just lack scoring depth compared to some other teams. And I think that that's something that if people don't start performing, that's something that down the line in crunch time, I think could really, really set them back, because there's other really, we've seen them play other good teams this year, and they're in a very competitive division right now. And it's just tough to see them have these types of performances where you have players that we expected more out of that are just not performing. So I almost wonder the trade deadline is next week. I wonder if they're even considering making a move of any kind, or no, do you not see that happening?
Don't know. I really don't know. Supposedly they were in on, for whatever that means or for whatever that's worth, on the Kyle Palmieri, which ended up being Palmieri and Zajac deal from the Islanders, or to the Islanders from the Devils.
Yeah.
I got to imagine they'll be in on stuff. The big thing this year for somebody like me, who I'd say I'm around the team if they practice, I'm there at least once, if not twice a week on average, right? Is just, you get a real different feel on what's, I guess, really happening with regard to injuries, with regard to attitude. It's not like a scoop, like an inside scoop, but it's a real inside feel. Get a talk and sit down to guys. I don't really have that this year as much because we're not around for obvious reasons. So, of course, it's our job to have, as much of a feel as we can, but it makes it harder. Like I sit here and I say, like, what is Tuukka's situation? What is, is he 1 or 2 days away from being really okay? Has he had 5 good days in a row? I don't know. I just don't know. I mean, the Charlie McAvoy thing, he missed the game the other night. I'm hearing it. They don't think it's that bad, but then again, they thought that the Tuukka thing was nothing. Yeah. So I don't know, Gabby. Are they going to get in on something? Well, how much do they really want to get in on? Now, if they know that their guys are okay, doesn't mean you still don't go kick tires on, I guess, another goalie in case Tuukka isn't okay. But how much you willing to spend for a team that, Carlo, where's Carlo at? Are you going to go into the playoffs with question marks with Tuukka, with Carlo? I'll put Charlie in the mix, McAvoy, only because we don't know what it is. It could be nothing, right? But it's a long-winded way of saying, who the hell knows? I mean, but if you got 3-4 guys that are legit hurt, that are 3-4 major elements to your team, why would you go out and make a huge deal if you're not sure if those guys are going to be able to really perform at the level, just to go in as a middling team, I don't know. But on the other hand, if Donnie says, you know what, Tuke's going to be all right. Our reports is that yes, Carlo is week to week, but we know it. They've said it's not his head, right? It's below his neck. So let's say it's a shoulder and arm, but so they have a 3-week window on that. Well, we know that he's going to be able to come back. And we know, these guys are going to be okay. Well, then maybe you go out and you swing. And I've said it now for 2 weeks. I feel like there's a better chance of making a bigger deal than just a one rental type deal for a high pick. I do. I think there's a better deal for a better opportunity for a bigger deal.
Yeah, I'm on board with you on that too. I think there's just a lot of question marks right now that it's what do you really want to give up right now? And I think there's a lot to consider in these next few days in terms of how this is all going to play out. And, really seeing, and with Tuukka, like you said, there's just too much there right now to really know for sure and make a confident decision in anything. And that's why where the team is at right now, when we're a few days away from this deadline, it's frustrating being in this type of position right now, because it's like, how do you really make that decision for what is good for this team for, the rest of this season, but even looking past that and just deciding, okay, what do we really think we want to invest in right now? And is this really worth it? Because what if this ends up being not as big of a situation as we think it might be right now?
Well, that's why I think a deal that includes players for the following years perhaps makes more sense, or at least another year. So much has to be taken into consideration. Contract amounts, not just dollar-wise, but physically, how many contracts, because you're only allowed up to 50. But why does that matter? Well, they're close to that, but also with the Seattle expansion draft coming up, you have to consider that for players too. Who's protected, who's not. There's a ton of stuff that goes into it that you can't minimize, right? So, but if they can pick up another player, that could help them for a year or two, obviously I'm not against that. You have big decisions. What are you going to do with David Krejci? What are you going to do with Jaro Halak? What are you going to do with Tuukka Rask after this year? Tons of questions. Yeah. And they're all good questions. And they, if you play the game, if you extrapolate out, if you don't re-sign those guys, any of those that I just mentioned, and right now I don't have any idea if they're going to or not. My guess is one for sure won't be back, two probably. I don't think all three would be gone, but just my guess. But anyway, you're talking 17 plus million in cap space right there.
Yeah.
That's a ton. But you can have all the cap space in the world, but if you don't do anything with it, what difference does it make? But that's a ton of cap space. You're 7.25 for Krejci, 7 for Tuukka, right? I'm not good at math, but that's 14.25, and then Yaro's at 2.3 or 3.2, I think, or just say 3. Just say he's at $3 million. It's over 17 million in cap space that you've got there.
Yeah, and that's the thing, is maybe they should start looking into the future, at least not like way down the line, but at least temporarily the next couple of years. And, you do have those veteran players on this team that who knows how much longer they're even going to be here either, like the Pasternaks of the world and those types of players.
Well, wait, Pasternak's, he's 24, right? Is
right.
24, yeah. 25. How much longer is he going to be here? I mean, if you come on, Gabby, you're not worried that he's leaving at the end of this contract, are you?
No, not the end of the contract, but I'm saying you have to think about the fact that you have some brand new players on this team that are just coming, into just getting to see kind of the playing time. So those young players, you have players that have been in the league for a while that can kind of nurse them into just, hopefully what they can become later on. But then you have other players that are these veteran players that, there's kind of that midway point kind of in between
Yeah, Charlie Coyle's a good example of it.
Yeah, the players that are at the in-between point now, and it's like, okay, so where does this team really see themselves going in the next couple of years? Like, what direction do they want to head in, and what do they kind of see themselves doing to, make them a team that really can compete over the next couple of years? Because this is a team that we've seen get so close and just couldn't finish the job. Especially a couple of years ago. And I think that considering that, there's just always something, it seems to be, that's missing. And granted, I mean, Tuukka Rask's performance in, that run was frustrating, especially in that Stanley Cup final, but that's beside the point. But
what was frustrating about it?
Just the fact that he was making a lot of mistakes and letting up so many goals that I think people thought that
in that run and that to get to the Stanley Cup final,
just in the final,
yeah, he had
like in that series against St. Louis.
Okay, well, listen, I don't disagree. I'm gonna say this. I understand that he has a lightning rod. I get it. Yeah. Okay. The Bruins don't get to the Stanley Cup final without him standing on his head at least one time in each round, if not two times in each round. I understand that for certain people that's not enough. I get it. I mean, and there's no question that Jordan Binnington in Game 7, first period, was it. He was it. I mean, he stole that first period. I don't know. I think when it's all said and done, a goaltender like Tuukka, I don't get the disdain. I don't get it. I've become very close, with Andrew Raycroft over the last couple of years working with him, and I trust his opinion as a goaltending expert a lot over mine. I do, having been a goalie in the NHL. And he doesn't get it either. Would you rather have a healthy Tuukka Rask or a healthy Jordan Binnington? I'm just using Jordan as an example, as a comparison. Year in, year out. I'd take Tuukka. I still would. Even though Binnington won that first period, I don't look at Tuukka's performance in Game 7 as the reason that the Bruins lost. I don't. I don't. But I think he's an easy target. So I know, having done all those games in that whole playoff run, both for NESN and the NHL Network and NHL Radio, et cetera, I'd say Tuukka was a major strength for that team when they got there. But yet, I just find it, and from just a person involved, Gabby, I just find it very interesting how people still like to blame him. I don't blame him at all for 2019. I don't.
Yeah, I mean, they definitely don't get to where they got without him. That's for sure. That was such that whole season to me, and just everything leading up to the Stanley Cup. That was a team that a lot of us really thought could get the job done at that point, and they came so close that it was just so frustrating to see them come up short.
It was hard.
They had all this momentum too going into that series, and I was excited to see them finish the job in that series.
But they went from feast to famine in that series. It was wild mood swings. I mean, major split personality, back and forth. When they got to their game, St. Louis couldn't handle them. When St. Louis got to their physical game, the Bruins couldn't handle them.
Yeah,
I look at it as I don't look at it as a goalie series. Binnington was good in his games. Tuukka was great in his games. It was a complete contrast in styles, and whichever team established their style in that series won that game.
Yeah, it was just so much back and forth, and you kind of saw different teams that would come in one game versus the next, and then back to the same team that came out for the first game and the game after that, and it just alternated. every game, which was super strange. And I thought that it was going to end in the Bruins' favor. I really thought that it was, but
So did we. So did I.
super upsetting. And then in 2020, they were playing really, really good hockey before the shutdown too. They looked really good before there was a big break in the season, and then they just never really fully got that back when the season resumed after the shutdown.
No, they didn't. They didn't get it back, and they were unfortunately for fans and for all of us that do stuff. I mean, they had a good first round, right? I mean, Carolina, they took care of biz, but you're right. I mean, they weren't the same team, and they never could get it back. There were other teams too that couldn't get it back, but not to compare the Bruins to other teams. St. Louis is actually a good example. They couldn't get past some of the COVID issues that they had. They never got their jam back ever. But with that said, it was a bummer. There's no solace in it that they lost to the eventual Stanley Cup champion, but they just were not as good as Tampa, and that's pretty obvious analysis.
Yeah, exactly. Tampa they were
wagging. They were wagging.
They just had it last year. They just really, really had it, and that really came to light. And they were just, once looking back on the whole situation and looking back on the playoffs, I mean, it just became apparent that nobody was going to beat them. They had something last year, and they were just simply the best team. And
they're the best team this year again too. I mean, whether or not they win it, I don't know, but I think they've lost a couple of games here or there. I still think they're the best team with the best goalie. I think in a 7-game series with Florida, they beat them. I do. I think in a series with Carolina, they beat them. So, I mean, look, a lot of stuff can happen between now and the playoffs, injuries and health, obviously, but I still think they're the best team out of that division. And the other two best teams are Colorado and Vegas. That's in my take.
Yeah, no, those teams are looking really, really good too. And it's going to be interesting to kind of see what happens down the stretch. Because like you said, obviously with health and now with the COVID factor, there's a lot of different things that could happen. But if these teams keep playing like they're playing right now, I do think that going into the playoffs, those are going to be the teams to beat. But in terms of just kind of looking towards the rest of this season, now that we're starting to really get into, a big part of the season, assuming that the Bruins, assuming they don't make any moves at the trade deadline, which, I'm sure they'll probably be involved in some way and look into something, and maybe they will make a move. But if this team as is right now kind of goes into the playoffs, what do you think is going to be kind of the biggest challenge that they might face against some of these other more competitive teams outside of just, scoring, which obviously if that improves, then that's
their defense. Their defense is going to be their biggest challenge. Now, it's going to be. How does it look? I mean, if everybody is healthy, so if McAvoy, if Carlo and Kevin Miller are healthy, your right side is good. Your right side's great.
Right.
So your left side, who's it going to be? Is it going to be Grzelcyk and Lausanne? I mean, are those two of the three for sure? Then are you playing Zaboral? Are you playing Tenorti? Are you shifting Connor Clifton over there? You've done that in the past. So that's if your D is healthy, you've got a fighting chance. But you don't have a chance if your D isn't healthy, and only because using this season as our measuring stick. If you're not going to get the depth performance from the aforementioned guys that we talked about earlier in the conversation, it's going to be a challenge. It's going to be a challenge. Does some of those other guys step up and help out and alleviate some of the pressure on their back end? I don't know. I don't know, but their defense, I think, their young defense is going to be a real challenge.
Yeah, and this is something that came to light even before the season started, was just wondering how the young defense was going to perform this year as a whole.
Yep.
And with the moves that they made defensively in the offseason, and I think it was that was something going into the season that people were really going to look out for, was like, okay, there's a lot of young players on this defense now, so how is that going to play out, and are they going to be able to perform when it comes to those big moments, especially in the postseason when it's must-win situations? And are you going to be able to step up and perform? And obviously staying healthy is going to be another big factor in that too. But I think that people are going to be really watching for that, because there's going to be a lot of good teams. And this is a year where nobody really knew how the Bruins were going to perform going into the season, because there were just so many question marks even when the season started, and that still remains now.
Yeah, no question. I mean, they're willing to. I didn't look at it as rolling the dice. I didn't. I looked at it more as figuring out what they have or don't have. So now, do they know enough of Lausanne? Do they know enough of Zaboral, for instance? I mean, they really don't, because defensemen take 250 plus games in the league to really establish themselves. But do they now have enough visual on those guys, using them as a young guy example, to say, okay, well, we're good with this person in this slot, and now we need to add or just detract here or there? I don't know. That's the question it comes down to. Or do they, do they go into the playoffs and they say, look, let's see how they really react to this situation. Is it part of the process? It might be. It might not be comfortable for some people, some fans out there, but I guess sometimes you have to know what you have or don't have, even more. Now, some people, I think, have already made their opinions, and I get it. I do. I get it. If you're saying that this is your last big run at a cup with this group, then you have to add to it. But if you're saying, look, we don't want to go crazy and make it too big of a deal, in the sense of, we don't want to blow up this team just to make one addition to give a run at the cup, then what do you do? I don't. Donnie Sweeney is a lot better at this than I am. It's an easy game sitting here in my office trying to figure it out, right? I mean, he and his staff are just going to look at it and they're going to say, this is what we have on the back end, and we're going to have to ride it out through the playoffs to see what we really, really have, and then make moves in the off season. I don't know.
Yeah, and I mean, that might be the approach that they take, because we're not really going to know fully what we have in those young players until they're in that scenario, I don't think.
Maybe. Some people already think they've seen enough.
Yeah.
So that's the beauty of the armchair GM.
I get in a way why people are feeling that way, that they've already drawn that conclusion and they feel like they already have enough of a sense of what these players have already, just based on what they've seen this season.
Yeah. Well, that's the beauty of, like, fans. There's I love it. I love hearing from fans. I love hearing and interacting with them, and some of them have great takes. They do, really do. And some, it's not enough. And we all want to be held, accountable, so to speak. But that's the beauty of a fan. They get to hold everybody else accountable from the outside. I love it. I do, and we all want the team to be good. When the team's good, really good, it benefits all of us. It's emotionally more satisfying. Excuse me, from a broadcaster perspective, I've never made any bones about it. Gabby, when the team is better, it's more interesting to do. It's more fun. It's also financially better. It is. The better they do, the better I do. So why wouldn't I want them to be good and to go as far as possible, right? I mean, I'd love for them to be able to go out and make a bunch of moves and go back to the Stanley Cup again, finals again. I'd love that and win it. I would love it, but it's a tough job. I mean, if it was easy, everybody would be doing. I'm talking about these general manager decisions and everything.
Exactly. Yeah. And a lot of people, forget that those are hard decisions to make too. And it's like, from the outside, it's like, oh, why wouldn't you do this, this, and this? But being an actual GM and doing that type of work, has got to be tough. I mean, I could never do that type of job, and just kind of looking at it from that perspective, like making a decision that, you don't know for sure if it's going to make the team better or not, but that's what you feel like might be best for the team at the time.
Right, but that's what you're paid for. It's what you're paid for, so that's what you do it, and there's only 31, soon to be 30. Well, actually, there's 32 GM jobs in the league. Excuse me. With the Kraken, Ronnie Francis is out there already. But I mean, let's see what he does. Let's see what the team does in the next couple of days. Let's see how healthy they get. I do think that will impact it an awful lot, the decisions that Don Sweeney and his staff makes.
Yeah, I think so for sure too. And I mean, we have a few days until the deadline still, and they'll be playing in between then. So I think it's just going to be a matter of seeing what they do. But they just have some teams that they just always struggle against. The Islanders it can never score against the Devils in like regular shooting, and they scored their first regular actual goal against the Devils this past week, whenever that game was. And so certain teams like that they just can't win games against. If they had just taken a couple games from the Islanders, then, and even in one more game from the Devils, then it's just frustrating to look at kind of what their record could be right now if they could just figure things out against those teams, because the other teams in the division they can compete with and they can win those types of games. It's just those teams. And I mean, granted, the Islanders have a great defense and that's a good team, but it's just frustrating when they play these types of teams and just can't seem to put anything together. And then you have you seem to put things together against the Islanders and then lose in OT in a game that the Islanders came back that they were trailing in too. And it just, I don't know what it is, but they just can't seem to get it together when they play a team like the Islanders.
Well, the Islanders are relentless, and the Islanders know what they aren't. So they know, more important, they know what they are, and they play straight line hockey, repeat, wash, rinse, repeat hockey. Get it out, get it in, forecheck, bring it to the front of the net. It's tough to play against. I go back to it, the type of, where the Bruins, their defensive crew has struggled with that, and they haven't been able to get the puck to the forwards well. And the Islanders don't stop. They don't. So, I know that, if only they did this, right? It'd be great, if we could revision history.
Yeah.
If I had a full head of hair, I could be a shampoo model too, right? And I don't right now, so I can't. I guess I could go and get a hair transplant and have a chance, but I haven't done it yet. So the Bruins, they need to be better against those teams. You're right. It's a very different year, and I found it to be a very difficult year to get a read on many teams. When all said and done, you're seeing again a few best teams. We knew that Colorado was really good. We knew that Vegas was really good. We knew that Tampa was really good. I thought the Islanders would be good. I didn't see them being this good. Is this going to be what leads them into a long playoff run? Well, now with the depth that they have, it's hard not to see them at least in a viable, legitimate position to do it. We all keep hoping that the Bruins, I think, will get contributions from guys further down the lineup. And I still want to believe in them. I'm big fans of some of those guys, but we haven't seen it. So I think it's one of those things now where it's hard to just say they're going to get it with certainty. There's hope, but with certainty. So it's if they don't get those performances, then they won't probably have a successful playoff.
Yeah, and at least the thing about this season that you kind of indicated earlier in your point before was just that this really was kind of an experimental year for the Bruins in terms of just with a lot of young talent and just really seeing what this team is about. And I think that this was a year that we kind of had to go in and expect that maybe there would be some downsides that people aren't used to seeing and some frustration that people haven't seen recently. And I think that that's a big thing that we've seen this year is just they really are. I do like to think of it as kind of experimental and just seeing what they have, and with the new format and just just how things are working and how they're only playing certain teams for the whole season, which I also find just kind of to be an adjustment for sure, because you're not used to seeing just those teams, strictly those teams throughout the full length of the season. And I think just having this year specifically, when there's a lot of changes in general, just with the league and the format, it's a good year to have that experimental year and just kind of figure out what you need to do to set yourself up for the future. And is this going to be a team as is right now that we think can still really push for a run, or do you have to make a lot of moves this offseason and just start replacing some of these players and just kind of get some more assets out of that, just because we really didn't know. We really didn't know going into this year. Like, this season had the potential to be really bad or really good. I think it just was a matter of seeing how the young players fit in with everybody and just health-wise what everybody was going to do and how they were going to adjust to this new system in terms of the format and the teams that they're playing.
Yeah. No, I thought that they would be a team that would make the playoffs. I kind of where I thought they are is where I thought they'd be. I thought they'd be a 3-4, at best a 2. Excuse me, probably more like a 3 or 4, which looks like that's where they'll end up. I'm not saying that to say this is I told you so. I'm saying that this is where I thought they would be when all's said and done. And because of the youth. Now, big choice. We already talked about this, but big choices in the offseason on a couple of guys establishes either they should have an awful lot of money to work with. They have to re-sign a couple of guys. Carlo's one guy that comes to mind. But they'll eat up a little money there, but they'll have a lot of money. Other teams with a flat cap out there, are they going to have to make some moves? Was that open up possibilities for the Bruins? I was glad that they, didn't bite on bigger deals for other free agents that were out there. Like the rumors with Taylor Hall, et cetera. I was fine with all that. So let's see. But a little ways to go here. I think they should get into the playoffs still. Again, I keep going back to this. If McAvoy and Carlo are out for any long period of times, and Tuukka too, then that changes the narrative on everything. But as we sit and talk here and record this, they're assuming those guys come back. I think they're okay to make the playoffs. After that, let's wait and see. Let's wait and see what Donnie does in a few days, and maybe we'll have different things to chat about. Yeah,
it's definitely just been an interesting season, if I could put it that way. Just the ups and the downs, and just kind of a roller coaster sometimes, and just coming into these games. And I mean, even the game against the Flyers the other night, that was just that kept me on the edge of my seat too. And I was like, this is just how this season has been going. I mean, the edge of my seat, and I really just I'm thanking the goaltending for just being able to keep them in these games when they are struggling to score and they just can't seem to find the net, and it's just been a season like that. And I think the playoffs are going to be tough this year. I don't know that they'll have enough to really make that push this year, but I agree with you. I think that they should make the playoffs, pending everybody being okay and coming back, obviously fully healthy. But I think that they should make the playoffs and just see what happens from there. And I think that it's going to be interesting to see what they decide to do in this offseason too, because then we'll really know what direction they're really going in.
Yeah, no. Long way to go before then. Don't even really want to go touch on that right now. Long way to go before then. We have touched on that, decisions to be made, but I can't even begin to speculate on that right now, with firm decisions. Let's see how the next few days goes. Let's see if that modifies the short-term and long-term future of this team at all. I don't think it will long-term wise, but short-term maybe. Let's see if they can, let's see. Can they pull off a hockey trade in season, a bigger deal in season? That would be, it would be interesting. There's probably a few things out there that are potential, and we'll go from there. That's it. So, we'll see from there, but hopefully they get healthy and hopefully they make the playoffs, get some experience there. I'd love to see him get on a little run. Right now, that it would be a tough first round either against Washington or the Islanders for them.
It was.
Right here, right now. I cannot predict the future. I can't see how the health is going to be. I can't see how the health of the other team is going to be. But as the teams are constructed right now, and the performances are getting from certain players right now, it would be tough. It'd be tough for the Bruins.
Yeah, I agree with that. And those are just two very good teams, and we'll see what happens. And I'm just going to stay optimistic and hopeful. That's all.
If they're healthy, they can beat these teams, especially Washington. If they're healthy, I think. But again, we keep saying if. Let's get a little more concrete information, and then we'll have a better idea then. Yeah,
exactly. That's definitely the moral of the story here. But I do appreciate you joining the show today and taking the time out of your busy day. Go Bruins. I'm excited to see what they do. So it should be a fun rest of the season. And I wish you the best of luck with everything and staying healthy and everything and just getting through the rest of this pandemic, and just hopefully we reach the end of it soon. And everybody else, to you all as well, stay healthy, and you all know where to find Boston Balling. I appreciate you all taking the time to listen every week. I really appreciate it, and I'll catch you all next week. So have a great rest of the week and weekend, everybody, and talk to you soon.